On the day of his mother's funeral, he received an envelope that destroyed everything he thought he knew about his origins. Alex grew up believing his mother was just a lonely and reserved librarian. But during the funeral, a stranger approached him and revealed a truth that could never have been foreseen. Now, he must face the ghosts of a buried past, travel halfway around the world, and discover that his life was built on lies, secret codes, and an experiment that should never have happened. This isn't just a story about family revelations. It's a story about identity, sacrifice, and what happens when a son discovers his own mother was a secret agent on the run, and he, a genetic key to something much bigger. Get ready for one of the channel's most thrilling and suspenseful stories, with twists and turns that will keep you hooked until the very last second. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. The sky was heavy, as if it were mourning too. The wind shook the treetops with restrained fury, and the smell of wet earth mingled with the scent of lilies freshly placed on the coffin. I stood there, not sure how I should feel. My mother had died 2 days before, suddenly, silently. An aneurysm. Nothing had warned her. Nothing had prepared her. She had simply gone. The priest recited the last words of the ceremony, but I barely heard. My body was present, but my mind was not. I was wandering between memories and gaps, trying to fit together the pieces of a relationship that had always been more about silence than conversation. My mother was never an outgoing woman. Loving, yes, but in her own way. Reserved, protective, and at times strangely distant. I remember the first time I asked her about my father. I must have been about 8 years old. She just said, "He left us." She never said anything else. And even when I pressed her over the years, her answers were still evasive. "It's better this way. You don't need to know." He wasn't good. Eventually, I stopped asking. I thought she was just protecting my childhood. Now, as I watched the coffin slowly descend, something inside me felt disconnected, as if the woman inside was both my mother and a stranger, a woman full of secrets. And I had no idea how many were still buried with her. People began to disperse. Distant friends, neighbors, some of her co-workers. Few knew that my mother had worked for 22 years as a librarian at a state school, but no one knew much more than that. She didn't go out much, didn't have close friends. Everything in her life was quiet, measured, restrained. Even her hugs had a time limit. That was when I noticed a man standing under a tree in the distance. He didn't fit in with the others. He was tall, wearing a dark overcoat, hat in hand, his eyes fixed on me. There was something uncomfortable about his posture, not threatening but tense, like someone who needed to say something but was still deciding whether or not to. As the last people left, he remained. Only when I was practically alone did he begin to walk toward me. "Are you Elvira's son?" he asked in a voice that seemed to have come from a deep well. Deep, low, and loaded with something I couldn't define. Guilt, perhaps. "Yes," I replied, a little hesitantly. "Excuse me, did you know her?" The man took a deep breath, looked at the coffin still in the half-light of the evening and said, "She was never who you thought she was." That hit me like a blade. "Like this?" He slowly opened his coat pocket and took out an aged envelope sealed with red wax. He handed it to me without another word. "When you're alone." And that's it. "Wait, who are you?" But he was already walking away. Steady steps without looking back. I tried to catch up with him, but when I turned the small path between the graves, he had disappeared. I returned home with the envelope in my hands, my heart racing and an anguish I couldn't name. It took me hours to open it. I stared at that red wax as if it were a seal for the end of everything I knew about my life. When I finally broke the seal, there was a letter, handwritten, in my mother's handwriting. "If you're reading this, it's because my time is up, and yours is just beginning. I lied to you. And now you need to know why. But before you go any further, go up to the attic. There's a blue box with a black ribbon on it. Nothing makes sense without it. I stood up on a whim. I climbed the attic steps with trembling hands. I hadn't been in the attic since I was a child. My mother always locked it, saying it was dangerous, that there were rats. Lie. Lie number one. The key was still hanging on the same nail behind the bookcase. I opened the door carefully. Dust. Darkness. A smell of old wood and forgotten paper, and then I saw the blue box, the size of a small suitcase, with a distressed black ribbon around it. I knelt down and touched it. The leather was cracked, the corners worn. But the weight was what made me hesitate. Something inside that box wasn't just physical, it was the weight of truth. And when I opened it, the first things I saw didn't belong to an ordinary librarian. They belonged to a woman who lived another life. And a picture fell to the floor. I picked it up, and I almost fainted. In the photo, there was my mother, wearing a military uniform, with another identity, and she was armed. The gun in the photo left no room for doubt. It was not a montage. It was a real pistol, held deftly by a woman who smiled in a cold, calculating way. My mother, or at least the person I thought was my mother. Behind the photo was an inscription in small, hurried letters, Kraljevo Base, 1989, Kraljevo. A small village on the Bulgarian coast, which I only vaguely knew from a geographical note I'd seen in a book once. Why would my mother be there? And with a gun? And in uniform? I turned back to the blue box. Inside, a folder with documents in Bulgarian, an expired badge with the name Nina Veleva, and an old passport, also Bulgarian, with her picture. Or rather, the woman I called mother for 34 years. The hands were shaking. Each item I removed was a piece that dismantled the entire story of my life. Letters in a language I didn't understand, some dating back to the 1980s and 1990s. One of them, in tiny letters and hand-pasted on yellowed paper, was called Coded Evacuation Instructions, Level Alpha. At the bottom of the box, I found a cassette tape, brown, with a faded blue label that read, Message for Alex, only if everything goes wrong. Alex, my name. That was a punch in the chest. My mother, or Nina, had predicted that everything could fall apart, that this truth would one day catch up with me, and she made a tape. At some point, she was afraid, very afraid. I came down from the attic as if my feet weren't touching the ground. I was still holding the tape, not knowing whether I wanted to listen to it or not. We no longer had a cassette player, but I remembered that the neighbor across the street, Mr. Ottavio, collected old stuff. I picked up my cell phone and dialed the number. Hello, it's Alex. Do you still have that tape recorder? Silence. Yes, I do. Why? I need to listen to a tape. Today. Now. He found the tone strange, but agreed. He received me half an hour later, with the recorder already on, and a look that was too curious for the moment. Something wrong? I don't know yet, I replied, but I'm going to find out now. I put in the tape. The sound crackled. Background noise. And then her voice. My mother's voice, but not the sweet, calm voice I had grown up with. It was a voice that was decisive, direct, no hesitation. Alex, if you're hearing this, it means I didn't get to tell you in time. I was part of an operation. I was an agent. My name was Nina Veleva. I was sent to Brazil in 1991, under orders from what was left of the Eastern Bloc intelligence structure. My mission was to disappear, and to protect information that couldn't fall into the wrong hands. You were born months later, and because of you, I disobeyed orders. I abandoned everything. I became someone else. I burned documents. I broke ties. I created a simple life for you. But now, maybe they know. She paused, breathing heavily. If someone has come your way, if they have given you this tape, it means that I have failed to protect you to the end. But still, I need you to trust me. Everything in the sealed red folder needs to be delivered to one person. His name is Emil Petrov, and he is in Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria. He is the only one who can explain why you were born under another identity and who you really are. The tape stopped there. Not a goodbye. Nothing more. Mr. Ottavio looked at me, open-mouthed, but I couldn't even cry. Something between fear and anger kept me static. That night, I didn't sleep. I took the passport. It was still valid for a few more months. I had never left the country. I never thought about going to Bulgaria. But now, it seemed like the only way. I bought the ticket without thinking twice. 48 hours later, I stepped onto Bulgarian soil with a backpack on my back, a name in my head, and a sealed folder that my mother never wanted me to open, except as a last resort. Sofia was cold, grey, shrouded in a mist that looked like something out of an old movie. People spoke quickly, in a language that sounded like code to me. I felt invisible, and at the same time, watched. I went to the address written on the back of the letter, Tsar Ivan Shishman Street, number 22, apartment 5, an old building, no doorman, cast iron doors. I walked slowly up the stairs. When I knocked on the door of apartment 5, no one answered. I tried again, and then I heard footsteps on the other side. The door opened just a crack, a thin man, wearing glasses with a beard. He looked at me with deep eyes, analyzing, measuring. Are you her son? I am. She died. Silence. Long. And then he opened the door wider. Come in, but know this. From now on, your life will no longer be yours. I walked in, and what he told me in the next few minutes changed everything I believed about myself. The apartment was dark and stuffy and smelled of old books and damp wood. There were shelves everywhere, not with novels or manuals, but with file folders, rolls of microfilm, sealed tapes, black and white photographs, and a typewriter in the center of the desk, as if it were still in use. Emil Petrov closed the door firmly behind me, locked it with 2 keys, and drew the curtain. This was not just a house, it was a hiding place, a memory bunker. Sit down, he said, pointing to a backless wooden chair. His voice was low but firm. Before I say anything, you need to understand that your mother saved my life, and yours. Then explain it to me. Everything. My voice came out harsher than I expected. I was exhausted and empty, but I wanted the truth, all of it. Emil walked over to the bookshelf and pulled out a red sealed folder, similar to the one I was carrying. He sat down across from me and took a deep breath. Nina, your mother, was one of the most valuable agents in the Ghost Division. A sector that officially never existed, not even within the Bulgarian Secret Service. Most of its members died, deserted, or went mad. She was known as the Blue Widow. Blue Widow? A code name. She infiltrated organizations of military and technological interest, seduced targets, extracted information, and disappeared. But in 1991, the mission changed. The world was falling apart. The regime was collapsing, and she discovered something she shouldn't have. He stood up, walked over to a padlocked box, opened it with a key that hung around his neck, and took out a plastic envelope with faded photos, documents signed in Russian, and an image that made me freeze. It was me, baby, wrapped in a light blue cloth, inside a laboratory. That's impossible, I murmured, taking the image with trembling hands. No, it's real. You were born in a facility called Gnezdo, deep in Bulgaria. The literal translation would be nest. There they created advanced genetic profiles, children engineered for resilience, adaptation, and other capabilities. That's crazy, I interrupted. Are you saying I'm some kind of project? Not a project, a target. Your mother took you from there. You were the first baby to leave alive. She stole you from that place, burned files, forged your birth certificate. That's why she ran away. That's why she never talked about the past. And that's why she always protected you with such silence. I stood up. I was gasping for air. My mind tried to refuse, reject, deny. But the pieces fell into place. Her behavior, her coldness at times, the way she taught me not to trust anyone, the lack of pregnancy photos, her evasive answers, the locked attic. And now, what do they want from me? The same thing they wanted 30 years ago, the secret she took with you, something you might not even know you carry. But someone, somewhere, thinks you have it. But why now? Emil went to the window and pulled out a newspaper. The headline read in Cyrillic. He translated it in a low voice. Man murdered in ruse. Bulgarian informant linked to former Soviet intelligence bloc, hanged with electric wires. No suspects. I looked at the photo in the newspaper. It was the man who gave me the letter at the funeral. My heart froze. My throat tightened. Was he protecting me? Yes. And now you are alone. The landline phone rang. 3 touches, then 2, then 3 more. They know you arrived. Emil turned off the light. He took a key from the wall and turned an entire bookshelf, revealing a secret corridor with stone walls. From now on, Alex, you're no longer just running away from the past. You're running out of time. I entered the tunnel with him, and before the wall closed behind us, I looked once more at the world outside. Sophia, now at night, seemed to breathe differently, as if it had eyes, as if he knew I was there. And at the end of that hallway was something I wasn't ready to see yet. A door, and behind her, the face I never thought I would find. The corridor was narrow, damp, and the sound of our footsteps echoed as if we were walking through the interior of an abandoned temple. The walls were made of old stones, covered in moss and signs of infiltration. Emil walked ahead with the flashlight in hand, as if he already knew exactly what he was about to face or encounter again. This tunnel was built in the 1970s to evacuate scientists and agents from the Soviet observation base. Your mother used this route once when she escaped with you. Now it's your turn. Why are you helping me? I asked, trying to stay focused despite the emotional weight of it all. Because she saved my life. And because if she doesn't help you, everything she did will have been in vain. We stopped in front of an old iron door with a crudely painted symbol on it. 3 horizontal lines intersected by a single vertical line. A symbol I didn't recognize, but it felt familiar, like something buried in my memory. Emil punched a code into a small, worn panel. The door clicked and slowly swung open, revealing a completely different room. It was a clean, cold room, all steel and concrete, with old screens turned off, files stacked, and a single chair in the center facing a wall covered in glass panels. And there, sitting, was a man. When he turned around, I felt the impact. It was like looking into a distorted mirror. He had the same eyes as me, the same set of jaw, the same thin line of eyebrows. "Alex," he said, as if he had known me for years. "Finally. Who are you?" My voice cracked. "How do you know my name?" "Because I'm your father." A thick silence fell over the room. Emil just lowered his head, respecting that moment as an inevitable ritual. "That's not possible. She said you had left us. That you were dangerous." The man stood up. He was older than in the photos I had never seen. Tall, with a firm posture, and eyes that showed he carried more guilt than memories. "She lied because she had to. And I agreed to disappear from your life for one reason only, to keep you alive." I took a step back. My muscles tensed, my breathing quickened. It was as if my body was saying, "Run away," but my heart, even though it was torn apart, still wanted to understand. "So you were part of this too, of the lab, of the creation?" He nodded slowly. I was the chief bioengineer of the Nesdo project. I was the first to place you in my arms. But when I realized what the military really wanted with the children, I opposed it. Your mother, she was an agent sent to watch me, but she fell in love, and together we betrayed the mission. You were our escape, our crime, and our salvation. I sat down. My legs could no longer support my weight. My father, this man, stared at me with the pain of someone who knows he has no right to forgiveness, but still begs for it with his eyes. So what do you want now? He walked over to a safe built into the wall. He punched in a code and pulled out a metal case, which he carefully opened. Inside was what looked like a syringe filled with a thick, silvery liquid, and a chip encased in glass. They want this, he said, the last prototype of the modified genetic code and the activation key that is in you, on me. The chip was implanted when you were still a newborn. It is dormant. But there are people who want to wake it up, for purposes you don't even want to imagine. I got up. Then why let me live like a civilian all these years? Why hide everything? Because you were the hope that a normal life was possible, that maybe in the end our sacrifice had been worth it. But now, it all came back. Before he could continue, an alarm sounded in the tunnel. Emile pulled out a revolver hidden in his waistband and ran to the door panel. They found the entrance, he shouted. We don't have time. My father ran to me, placed the briefcase in my hands, and pulled me towards a side door. Guard this with your life. Don't let them take it. And above all, only trust those who are willing to die for you. The door was broken down in the back hallway, muffled explosions, shots. And then everything was chaos. The last sound I heard before I passed out was my father screaming my name. When I woke up, I was in a place I didn't know, and completely alone. The ceiling was white, lit by cold lights that flickered softly. The air smelled of disinfectant and metal. For a second, I thought I was in a hospital, but when I tried to move, I realized my wrists were bound by leather straps. I panicked. I struggled against my restraints. I screamed, but my voice echoed in vain. The room was small, with smooth walls and no windows. A camera rotated slowly in the corner. I was being watched. I tried to remember what had happened. The tunnel, the briefcase, my father, the explosion, and then nothing. He's awake, said a voice behind the door with a thick accent. Call the commander. Minutes later, the door opened and a middle-aged man walked in. He wore a black suit, his hair slicked back and his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes were disturbingly calm, like someone who had seen everything and was no longer surprised by anything. Alex Vileva, or would you rather be called the mistake that got away? Who are you? Where am I? Where doesn't matter. What matters is what's inside you, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't know anything, he smiled. Not yet. But who knows? Let's activate the protocol. What? He turned to the wall, tapped a command on an invisible panel, and the wall in front of him changed color. It was a screen. On it appeared lab images, top-secret archive records, genetic simulations. On each one, my face was there, at various ages, from newborn to recent photos I'd never taken. They monitored me, my whole life. Your mother thought she could trick us, but we always knew where you were. We waited, we watched. She made the mistake of returning to Bulgaria, and now the cycle is complete. What do you want from me? The code. What she protected with her own life, and you will give it to us. Or it will just be a body without a function. He came closer, put his hand on my shoulder. But the good news is, it's already happening. You've started remembering things, haven't you? I blinked, and for the first time, I felt something strange in my head. As if memories that weren't mine were trying to fit together, images, fragments, an open field, cables attached to my body, a man in a mask saying my name in Russian. a female voice lulling me in a language I didn't understand. "Memories," I whispered. "Exactly, they are coming back. And with them, access." He left the room without saying anything else. A little while later, a nurse came in. But she was different. Nervous. She was sweating. "Be quiet," he muttered, pretending to check my pulse. "Who are you?" She pulled her hair up. Under the collar of her blouse, a necklace with a letter hanging. "E. I'm here because of your mother. I'm one of the last pieces of the exile protocol. I came to get you out of here, but we only have one chance. Let me go now." She cut the strips with a blade hidden under her apron. She handed me a coat and led me quickly through a side service door. We ran through empty corridors, metal stairs, until we reached an exit that led to a hangar. There, an old Jeep was waiting, with its engine running. "Who else is behind this?" I asked as I entered. She turned on the radio. A male voice, speaking Bulgarian, answered on the other end. "The boy from the nest is on the move. Phase 2 has begun." "Who was it?" She looked me in the eyes. "Your brother." "What? You're not the only one who survived?" Before I could react, the sound of helicopters filled the sky. We were surrounded. The roar of the blades was deafening. The light from the spotlights swept the darkness like hungry eyes. The nurse, or agent, whatever she was, pressed the accelerator hard, and the Jeep sped off into the Bulgarian night, winding down a dirt road, while the sound of the helicopters followed us like predators that had finally spotted their prey. "Where are we going?" I shouted over the roar of the engine. "If we can get to the border, there's a contact waiting for you in Romania. A journalist. He has evidence, and he knows everything about Gnezdo." "Why are you helping me?" She dodged a fallen tree and answered without looking at me. "Because I am also the daughter of someone who was used by them. We heard gunshots. They tore through the air and hit the rear window. Shards flew. I ducked instinctively, protecting my head." "They won't stop," she murmured. 2 minutes later, we turned off the road and onto a rocky trail hidden among pine trees. It was dark and winding, but the dense vegetation began to muffle the sound of the helicopters. She turned off the headlights and continued driving with only the moonlight filtering through the branches. A tense silence formed. What did he mean about my brother? She took a deep breath. There were five children created at the same time, each with a genetic specialization. You were the most stable, the only creation with the mutation controlled. But another survived. Who? His name is Leon. His mother thought he was dead, but the truth is that he was taken out of Europe. He grew up being trained as a weapon, a gun, Gnezdo code, and now he has been sent to find you. I closed my eyes. Nausea washed over me. It was as if my existence had been hijacked by a cruel farce. What was left of my identity was dissolving more and more. What if he finds me? He won't recognize you as his brother. He'll recognize you as a target. Suddenly, the Jeep braked sharply. In the middle of the trail, a figure stands. Alone. Property. The still-off headlight partially illuminated the body with the reflection of the moon. A tall man, shaved head, black coat, posture straight as a soldier. His eyes shone with an unusual intensity, and for a moment I had the feeling that he already knew everything about me. The officer put the car in reverse, but before she could maneuver, another explosion. The rear tires were hit by a precise shot. The car went down a ditch and hit a tree, throwing us both forward with brutality. I tried to open the door, but it was locked. The officer pulled me forcefully through the broken side window. "Run!" he shouted. "Now!" I ran toward the forest, my heart pounding, branches cutting into my arms, feet sinking into the sodden ground. Behind me, footsteps, just one, rhythmic, determined. Leon! I knew it was him, and he was playing. He wasn't running, he was walking, as if he knew the prey had nowhere to go. The forest opened up into a clearing. And there, surrounded by ancient trees and low-lying fog, I found myself face to face with him. "You," I whispered. He looked at me, and for the first time, he smiled. Alex Veleva, the boy who fled the nest. I raised my fists even though I knew I had no chance. But then he raised his hand, and something impossible happened, my muscles paralyzed. Not out of fear, but for a force within me that seemed to respond to his presence. "He's starting to wake up," Lian said. "Finally." And he touched my forehead with 2 fingers. Images exploded in my mind. A familiar voice, a white room, 5 cribs, a lullaby in a language I'd never learned, and the sound of crying. Mine and his. I collapsed on my knees, and before I passed out, I heard his last sentence. "Mother lied to both of us, but now only one can continue." I woke to light filtering through the tree branches, my lungs burning as if I'd been running for hours. The cold ground beneath me was damp, and there were drag marks all around me. But there was no sign of Lian, or the agent, or anyone. I tried to stand up, but a sharp pain shot through my head, as if something had been activated inside me and now wanted to come out. Images still danced in the corners of my mind, fragments, echoes, shadows. My eyes found a figure leaning against a tree. It was her, the woman who had helped me, wounded, pale, but alive. "Are you okay?" I ran to her. She opened her eyes with difficulty, a deep cut on her shoulder. He spared you." "Why?" "Because he doesn't know who you are yet. He feels, but he doesn't understand. Lian was programmed to destroy, but not to decipher." I took off my coat and pressed it over her wound. "We need to get out of here. You said there was a journalist in Romania. How do we find him?" She pressed her lips together, resisting the pain, and took a folded piece of paper from her pocket. A phone number and the name Petru Dumitrescu. "Call him from any public landline. Use the password Blue Widow left seeds. And you, I won't last long, but you need to keep going. I'm not going to leave you here." She smiled at the corner of her mouth with sadness and tenderness. "Your mother would be proud." But before I could respond, the sound of footsteps coming from the trail cut through the silence of the forest. We hid behind the undergrowth. 2 armed figures walked past, speaking in Russian. They were tracking, following the path I had left. They weren't from Lian. They were from a third force. The agent's expression became tense. "That changes everything. They sent the neutrals. If they catch us, there will be no negotiation, no prisoners." "Who are they?" "Mercenaries hired by those who want the code without government involvement. They are like starving dogs. They sell their loyalty to the highest bidder, and right now, the code inside you is worth millions." The voices grew more distant. We left slowly. A little later we reached the road, abandoned, winding, and by some miracle, an old car was approaching. I ran to the middle of the track and raised my hands. The car braked suddenly. A gray-haired man rolled down the window. "Alex? Petru? Come in, quickly." We helped the agent to go up. Petru drove in silence for a few minutes until we turned onto a narrow secondary road lined with abandoned plantations. Then, along a cobblestone alley until you reach an isolated house with reinforced bars and windows. "We are safe here," he said. Upon entering, I noticed a table with documents, newspaper clippings, folders, and, in the center, a photo. It was my mother, young, in a meeting room, surrounded by other people. In the caption, "Last conference of the Gnezdo deserters, February 1994, all dead, except one." Petru turned to me with tired eyes. "Your mother was the last piece of a silent rebellion. She betrayed Gnezdo, she betrayed governments, she betrayed alliances, but everything for a reason. Which?" He handed me a laminated sheet of paper. It was a map with points marked in red. Because she discovered where the second code is kept, the one that completes yours. The one Lian needs to become what they want, and the one you need to stop it. Where it is, he pointed to southern Bulgaria, near the Turkish border, a town called Svilengrad. It's hidden in a deactivated underground base. Your mother sealed the entrance with a genetic password. Only you can open it. The house phone rang. Petru answered it. He was silent for a moment, then his expression changed. He hung up. It was him, Lian. What did he say? He said he was coming here, but not alone. Alone. Petru looked at me gravely. He's coming with someone. Someone you thought was dead. My heart stopped. Who? Your father. The world seemed to dissolve for a moment. My father. Alive. I had seen him taken away myself, perhaps killed in the explosion. And now Petru claimed he was coming with Lian, the man who had nearly destroyed me. The equation was already too complex, but with this new piece, it became impossible to solve logically. Is this a game? I asked hoarsely. A trap? No, Petru said firmly. This is the last chance. He wants to talk to you. He said you deserve the truth, and that he will give it to you personally. The injured agent, now lying on the couch, shook her head. Careful, Alex. Even if it is your father, no one returns from Gnezdo without deep scars, and some of them may be in the choices. That night I waited. The sound of the wind against the windows echoed like whispers. The clock was just past midnight when the headlights of a car cut through the darkness outside. Two silhouettes descended, a tall, smooth-moving one, another, Lian himself, with the rigidity of a predator. Petru unlocked the door. I stood in the center of the room. The door opened slowly, and there he was, my father, with an expression that mixed tiredness, guilt, and hope. Alex, he said, almost in a whisper, do you still believe me? I didn't answer. My eyes went straight to Lian, who had stopped a few feet away. His eyes still burned with the same animal intensity, but there was something different now, a disconcertion, as if he too had begun to wonder what he was doing. My father took something out of his coat pocket. It was a photo, old, torn at the edges. He showed me and Lian, babies, in the same crib, our hands clasped together, a handwritten note on the back. If one falls, the other will pick him up. If one gets lost, the other will find him. My mother had written this. Lian shivered. She stared at the image, and for a second, a single second, her eyes filled with something human. She held me at night. I remember her scent. He hesitated. My father turned to me. She loved us, the way she could. But she knew the day would come, the day you two would stand face to face. And on that day, there would be no right or wrong, only choices. Silence. Petru was holding a folder. He handed it to me. Here's the map, the entrance, the final access. Only you can activate it. I opened it. It was the final step. The real place where the data was hidden, the essence of the Gnezdo project, the original code, the key to everything, and a letter from my mother, sealed, addressed to me and Lian. Read it. Together, Petru asked. I looked at Lian. He nodded. We sat side by side, and I opened the envelope. My children, there was never a perfect plan, nor a cost-free escape. I had to choose between truth and love, between mission and motherhood. And I chose you. You may never forgive me for everything I hid. But know this. I did it because in the heart of the chaos, you could still be human. Don't let anyone, not governments, not codes, not traumas, decide who you will be. You were born from the same womb, from the same fire, but the light you will carry into the world depends on what you choose now. With eternal love, Mom, Nina. The letter fell from my hands. The room was completely silent until Lian spoke. If this all ends today, I want to end up by your side, not against you. And he extended his hand. I held her. The next day we set off together for Svilengrad. The base was waiting for us. The code was waiting for us, but more than that, a new chance to break the cycle. For the first time I looked up at the sky and didn't wonder where I came from, but yes, as far as I can go. End or the beginning.